It's completely natural to feel stressed about feedback. And it doesn't matter whether you're the giver or the receiver. Studies show our heart rate goes up just the same. But for the receiver, feedback can feel extra personal. One of my earliest appraisals read, "Anna does not take criticism easily." I just joined the Navy, something I'd always dreamed of doing from an early age, and it felt tough to fall short in some way. Since then, I've observed thousands of real-life conversations in over 40 countries and realised pretty much everyone finds these conversations difficult, no matter whether they're the most junior employee or the CEO. And if you're a manager, being able to lead these feedback conversations confidently is one of the most important skills you'll ever learn, not only for your next one-to-one, but your whole career long. That's not just because feedback conversations are so critical to results, it's also because we have far more of them, 20, 50, 100 times more than other types. Your skills are also vital for your team. Studies show that employees are over 3 times more likely to do outstanding work given daily feedback. Great for them and for you. But here's the thing, it's not just about holding the conversations, it's how you lead them that makes all the difference. Your team's expectations have changed dramatically over the last few years. Employees are no longer prepared to sit back and have the manager talk at them. They want more control, to make their own choices, for the conversation to be collaborative, maybe even to give you feedback. And rather than make feedback more difficult for you, we're going to look at how these changes in fact make it much less stressful because they reposition who's taking responsibility for the conversation. Your team member, not you. Let's explore how you do this so you can feel relaxed and confident in every feedback conversation from now on. By the way, quick hello before we do that. My name's Anna, and if you're new here, then welcome. And if you're returning, then welcome back. So what are the skills? Watching those thousands of conversations has shown that each of your people needs the conversation to do 5 things. I've put these together to form the acronym CEDAR. Think of it like a mighty tree growing from a small seed. You may be thinking 5 steps is quite a lot to remember, but they're going to transform your confidence. They'll guide you through the conversation and help you stay on track. No going round in circles. They're going to make the discussion collaborative. And they'll give as much ownership as possible to your team member. The first step in feedback then is context. In other words, simply let people know what you'd like to talk about and how big it is, the impact. Whether positive or developmental, not everything is huge. You probably know the story of Chicken Little, who had an acorn fall on his head and rushed around telling everyone the sky was falling in. Sometimes we can present feedback like that. Every piece seems critical. Instead, start by explaining, is it a small acorn, something just day to day, or one that's capable of having some serious impact? If the conversation is about something they've done well, positive feedback, don't forget to say this right at the start to put them at their ease. If it's about a gap that needs closing, show empathy by saying something like, this task definitely has its challenges. Then ask your team members' perspective. How do they see this situation? This way, the conversation starts off collaboratively and feels like you're working together. There's one key tip here. If you're talking about an improvement area or a gap that needs closing, don't talk about their behaviour. Talking about what they did or didn't do here only raises the emotional temperature unnecessarily. Instead, talk about the task. Ask them, what's going well with this task and where are the challenges? Changing this focus is a small change but will make a huge difference. The second step in CEDAR is E, examples. You know when you've had feedback that's hard to pinpoint, managers who maybe say things like you need to be more of a team player or be better with customers or even must try harder. Your team member will need clear illustrations of exactly what they did well or less well. As the saying goes, a picture paints 1,000 words, and it's a great idea to group these examples together rather than drip them here and there throughout the conversation. Having all the examples together makes this feel to your team member less like a game of beat the frog or whack-a-mole if you're in the US. Your top tip here? Don't give too many examples or they'll feel like the proverbial drinking from a fire hose. 2 or 3 should be more than enough. The third step in CEDAR feedback is an important one, diagnosis. This step is about helping your people explore why they are where they are. Diagnosis sounds a bit forensic, and that's deliberate because it's where you explore together what's influencing the outcome, creating invaluable insights and aha moments. Those influences can be, well, the impact of the external environment, things like resources, marketplace conditions, budget, team availability. Maybe even as the manager, we forgot to brief them properly. And of course, outcomes might also be the result of your team members' own skills, actions and capabilities. If the feedback is positive, ask, what were the capabilities you used that were so effective? Help them think through, how did they do it? If the feedback is developmental, perhaps they need some coaching or motivation. Perhaps they've got problems at home. Whatever the combination of factors is, looking at both the wider influences and their capabilities will give a full picture of the reasons behind the feedback. To explain how this works, in my book Now You're Talking, I explore the capsize of the Hergasaka just along the coast from where I live. She was carrying luxury vehicles, Porsches, Bentleys, Range Rovers, which were all damaged. The accident report shows there wasn't one single cause but a wide range. She wasn't loaded correctly, there was poor communication, ballast tanks weren't working properly. Altogether, the cost came to £10 million. It's often the same with issues at work. Outcomes are a combination of influences, although usually a lot less expensive. So before moving to actions, examine both wider influences and then where your team members' own actions and skills had an impact. By the way, very few, if any, feedback structures include this step, but unless you and your team look at what's influencing outcomes first and do this diagnosis, any actions you set are likely to be pure guesswork and probably a waste of your time. This illustration, based on a Chinese saying, is a great reminder. If there's a problem with performance, it's so tempting to start hacking away at the branches. Instead, try inspecting the root causes. So far in CEDAR feedback, we've covered context, examples and diagnosis. Now we switch to looking forward. The A in CEDAR is actions. This is where your discussion switches ahead to feed forward. In other words, what next? Always ask your team member for their ideas first. If the suggestions come from you, you'll own it, not them. For example, if the conversation is about something positive, a great question is, where else would be a great place to make progress? If the feedback is developmental, simply ask, what would you like to do next? That doesn't mean you shouldn't give your own suggestions, just not too early. Managers are trained to be heat-seeking solution finders, and it's so tempting to jump in with our own suggestions because, of course, we know what they should do. Take a pause to create enough space for your team member to come up with their own ideas. If they do need help, a great way to add your own suggestions is to use what if, as in, I know you're trying to achieve this, what if? In his book Little Bets, How Breakthrough Ideas Emerge from Small Discoveries, Peter Sims gives the example of an animator getting feedback on their sketches for Toy Story 3. Instead of criticising the sketch or saying no, the director would build on the starting point by saying something like, I really like Woody's eyes, and what if his eyes rolled left? In case your team member is seriously underperforming, do add your thoughts more firmly, but give them a chance first, and don't make this too soon. The last CEDAR step is review. If you don't follow up, there's a chance your team member will think the feedback probably didn't matter that much. Then any actions you've agreed will probably quietly slide to the bottom of their to-do list. Always ask your team member when they'd like to follow up first, rather than imposing your own deadline. If that date doesn't work for you, then explain why, but do ask first because it gives them more control, and then they'll own this. And of course, once you have a date, don't forget to support them. So a quick recap here. Why are CEDAR steps going to help you feel less stressed? Well, 3 main reasons. First, they're collaborative, changing the conversation from one of you telling to being supportive. Secondly, they encourage your team members to examine the feedback for themselves and come up with their own ideas. And third, they give whoever is on the receiving end a greater sense of ownership and control over their own work. Better for them and a whole lot better for you as the manager. If this seems like a lot to take in, I have some tools to help. First, there are one-page conversation guides for both you and your team member, free to download on my website. Second, follow the link here to see an example of the skills being used in a conversation between a manager and a team member. And there's more in my book, Now You're Talking, the Manager's Complete Handbook to Leading Great Conversations at Work, even the tough ones. I'm excited to hear how it goes. Do send me any questions. For more videos on how to lead these essential conversations, click on the links here. There are also useful tools in the description below. Wishing you great conversations.